Hello children, we are beginning with another kingdom, that is fungi, and we have up till now completed kingdom Monera and Protista. I think by mistake I said that phylum Protista, it is kingdom Protista. Okay, so don't get mistaken with that. So this is kingdom fungi, and the next kingdom, which consists of multicellular organisms, and their nature is basically they are decomposers and saprophytes. So fungi are a large group of organisms, and somewhere around 1 lakh species they are known of this particular kingdom, that is fungi. So we can call it as the kingdom of multicellular decomposers. They are achlorophyllous, that means chlorophyll is absent. Spore bearing, that means there are spores present specifically when they reproduce. Non-vascular organisms, and their cell wall is made up of fungal cellulose or chitin, and which reserve their food in the form of glycogen. We'll see in this part the general properties of fungi, and after that what is there in your syllabus is the general characters, mode of reproduction, which include all types of spores, sexual reproduction with a definition of isogamy and isogamy, oogamy, plasmogamy, karyogamy, dikaryophase, then their classification as zygomycetes, ascomycetes, basidiomycetes, deuteromycetes, characteristics of all these four groups with example, and the economic importance of fungi, where we will see the role of fungus in the field of medicine, bakery, environmental decomposition, and after that a little bit about lichen and mycorrhiza. All right, so we begin with this study of this fungus. We call it as mycota. The name that has come from mites, a Greek word that means mushroom. So fungi, they are eukaryotic organisms, and we call them protists. They differ from bacteria and other prokaryotes. So here protist means the multicellular organisms. So eukaryotic and multicellular. I told you that cell walls, they contain chitin that is present for their rigidity and support, and they consist of some other polysaccharides. So what you have to learn is that chitin, and in some cases they consist of cellulose also. So these are the chemical compounds, mannan and polysaccharides, which help in the formation of chitin. Only have to learn that they contain chitin. Cytoplasmic membrane, which they are surrounded with, they contain ergosterols, possess true nuclei with nuclear membrane because they are eukaryotes. So they contain nuclei which is covered with nuclear membrane and the chromosomes. They can divide asexually, sexually, or both types, and they can exist in unicellular as well as multicellular forms. So unicellular forms are yeast, whereas other highly complex forms, they are mushrooms which are present. So the simplest fungus, that is unicellular, that is yeast, and they reproduce by budding. Then there are different forms of this fungi. So first you need to understand that they are heterotrophic organisms, and they have cell wall, and they reproduce by spores. So they are also separated on the basis and the mode of their nutrition also. All right, now see the study of fungi, that is called as mycology. That is why the name is taken from the mushroom. So if you see the structure, that is the simplest fungus, that is unicellular. They exist in the form of yeast, and the next form is a hypha. So elongation of one cell, it produces a tubular thread-like structure that you can see here. So this tubular structure, that forms the hypha, and if there is a range, the chain of these unicellular forms which are a tangled mass. So is unicellular ho gaya, yeast, fungus simple, then elongation of one cell, hypha, and tangled mass of hyphae, they are called as mycelium. Fungi producing mycelia are called molds of filamentous fungi. This hyphae may be septate or aseptate. So what is the meaning of septate and aseptate? See, if they have if the branches are absent, then it is aseptate, and if every part they bear the the branches. That means within this there are number of divisions. Within this one filament, they have septa or the wall which is present. So that is called as septate hypha. Otherwise, it is aseptate hypha. So basically, the fungal structure, it is a simple form is yeast, unicellular. Range, they form a thread-like structure, that is mycelium. The interconnected filaments, singular form, that is hypha, and each hypha, they are bounded by a cell wall of chitin. They are nitrogen containing polysaccharide. You all know that this chitin is also present on the upper part of insect cuticle, and in case of some other animals, but it is absent in higher animals. In some lower fungi, the wall is composed of cellulose, and that it tells the evolution of the fungi to plants. In some fungi, the protoplasm streams, they form through hyphae, and they contain multinucleate organisms which are called as cenocytes. So higher forms may, they have a cross wall which is called as septa. So if this is present, they are septate, and if it is absent, then they are called as aseptate forms, non-septate or aseptate forms. Now let us see quickly the general characteristics. So I told you all are eukaryotic. They possess membrane bound and they contain chromosome. There is a range of membrane bound cytoplasmic organelles which are present in them. They are filamentous, composed of individual microscopic, agar single hai to hypha, and if they form a branch system network, that will be as mycelium. Unicellular form ka example ho gaya yeast. Protoplasm is surrounded by a rigid wall which is composed of chitin and glucans. Some may contain cellulose also. I told you in the beginning only, they can reproduce sexually, asexually, and they produce different types of spores. We are going to talk in detail about it. Their nuclei, they are typically haploid and they form compartments. So they form that septate mycelium. Although Oomycota and some yeast possess diploid nuclei, they are achlorophyllous. That means chlorophyll is absent and pigments are not capable of photosynthesis. That is why they are kept from the kingdom, they are kept separate from kingdom Plantae. They are chemoheterotrophic, chemoorganotrophic, heterotrophic basically. So they utilize the organic sources of carbon in the environment and from the chemical reactions to synthesize the organic compounds they require, which is required for growth and energy. Then there is they possess characteristic range of storage of compounds. So they can store glycogen, sugar, alcohols, lipids, traculose, etc. They may be free living from or they may be parasitic or mutualistic, that is symbiotic. In symbiotic association they can be present. Basically they are found everywhere. They are cosmopolitan distribution. That means they can occur in any habitat wherever life is possible. Too hot or cold or all these things, they hardly matter. Some fungus, they occur in fresh water, some in marine water, some are in terrestrial, and some are airborne. Many species are different types: parasitic, infecting plants, animal and human beings, and some may form the relationship with other organisms. That is why it is called as symbiotic. So you can see here the unicellular forms. Then see the diagram is given, the septate. So you can see these are the cell wall which is made up of chitin. There are number of nuclei present, so that is cenocytic, and septate means there are number of septa, the walls which are present. You can see these are the septums. This is the septum showing that there are different sections which helps in showing the cross walls. So they are basically the cross walls which are showing the septate, this hyphae, and cenocytic. This is aseptate. You can see there is no septum which is present here. So they are cenocytic hypha, but they are aseptate forms. Fungal growth forms. Many of us are familiar with the appearance of mushroom and toadstool. Whenever we talk about any fungus, so there are only 2 or 3 images that come to our minds, and the most common is mushroom. I hope you are all aware that mushroom belongs to this group, that is fungus. These structures are simply large macroscopic fruiting bodies produced by some group of fungi. So this growth form is only present in a group. And here you can see this is the hyphae and the network of this one singular hyphae. There are too many these branches they form, mycelium here. So they are the fruiting bodies which is present in some group of fungi. The main fungal body, it consists of what? The filamentous hyphae, which form a net-like structure that is called as mycelium, which I have already explained to you. Now, if we see the cell structure, so the higher forms which I am going to describe with you are ascomycetes, basidiomycetes, deuteromycetes. These are the further classes of this fungi. So they are non-motile, and motile cells do not occur in their life cycle at any stage. So that means all these, they consist of non-motile form. In lower fungi, that is phycomycetes, the reproductive cells and asexual zoospores, they are uni or biflagellate. That means the presence of flagella is there. The flagella are of two types. This part is not required, but I can just tell you this is an extra thing. Whiplash and tinsel type. So this is not there in your course. Only you have to understand that the cell, they bear flagella. Then we see on the basis of their nutrition. So these fungus, they can be read under these categories. So if you see, the first type is parasitic fungi. So fungi that take their food from the host plant and die with the death of the host. So then they are called as obligate parasites. Some parasitic fungi, after the death of the host, are able to absorb food from their. So one means for obligate parasites, the host life is must. Whereas if the parasitic fungi, after the death of the host also, they are able to absorb the food from the decaying body, that is called as facultative saprophytes. So the difference between obligate parasite and facultative saprophyte must be clear. Obligate means for that the host that should be living, whereas in case of facultative, they depend on the dead host also, and from the dead and decaying body they can absorb the food. Fungi parasitic on plants have specialized hyphae. So these fungi which are parasitic in nature, they contain a specific structure that is called as hostoria, which penetrate in the host cell and they absorb the nutrients which are present there. Hostoria may be knob-like or branched. Now the second category is facultative parasitic fungi. It is normally saprophytic or lives freely but can become parasitic on certain occasions. So this is another type which are called as facultative parasitic fungi. The third type is saprophytic fungi, where they take their food from dead and decaying matter only. That is called as obligate saprophytes, that I told you in the beginning. So, there is a difference in obligate saprophyte and obligate parasite. Obligate parasite means that the host has to be living. Fungi that take their food from the host plants and die with the death of the host, whereas obligate saprophytes, they take their food from the dead and decaying matter. So they are saprophyte, so they are saprophytic fungi. Okay, then facultative parasitic fungi, these are normally saprophytes in nature. They live freely but can become parasitic depending upon the certain occasions. Then facultative saprophytic fungi, an organism usually parasitic, occasionally may live or grow as a saprophyte. So they are parasitic in nature, but they may live or grow as a saprophyte. Symbiotic fungi, in symbiotic, which is there again in your course, we have to take a little more about in detail about this mycorrhiza and lichen, but we can see here also mycorrhiza. Some fungi, they occur in a long-lasting beneficial association with the roots of higher plants. Then it is termed as mycorrhiza. So some fungi, they occur in some beneficial association with the roots of gymnosperms, with the root of higher plants, and those higher plants are gymnosperms. For example, we have pinus. This association of fungus living in the roots of gymnosperm, that is called as mycorrhiza. These plants, they lack root hair and absorb water and minerals from the soil with the help of fungal hyphae. And the fungal hypha, they will convert this insoluble minerals from the soil into the soluble form, and so that they can give it to the higher plant, that is gymnosperm. So are you getting it? That this mycorrhiza is that type of fungus. It is a specific kind of fungus which is in the symbiotic relationship with the higher plants. So mycorrhiza, if they are living inside some plant, for example Gymnosperm pinus, so they are living inside and they are they are providing them this soluble form of these minerals which were not available, and in turn they are getting space to live in. Lichen, what is lichen? A symbiotic association between green or blue algae, algal cells and fungal hyphae. You know, algae is preparing food and fungus is supplying them with the water. Okay, so these are the certain types of fungus depending upon the various types of nutrition. So here you can see parasitic fungi, the example that this fungal hyphae is there, and how through hostorium, there is a structure I told you. So ये fungal hyphae से एक protruding structure which comes within the cell of the host. So plant cell wall के अंदर they go inside so that they can absorb the food material. So that is parasitic fungi, example with the hostorium. Then saprophytic fungi. Saprophytic fungi, I told you that they will take their food from the dead or decaying organic matter. So they are obligate saprophytes. Okay. Then this in the symbiotic association, here the example of lichen is given, where algae and fungus, they are living in an association. Okay. So that is the examples of these depending upon their nutrition. Okay. So now in the next part, we will discuss about the reproduction in fungi. So there are different ways by which this fungus can reproduce. There are sexual forms of zygospores, ascospores, basidiospores, whereas asexual include budding or fission, and in vegetative type also they can reproduce. Asexual spores, they are formed on or in specialized structure. They may be different in size, shape, color, but they are characteristic or constant for a particular species. So we will take up in detail the reproduction in fungi in the next part. And in this session, I told you about the kingdom of multicellular decomposers, that is kingdom fungi, and their habitat, their habit, their structure of a cell, their septate and aseptate hyphae, mycelium. Then I also told you, depending upon the nutrition, how they are classified. Now in the next part, we shall be discussing about the reproduction in fungus along with the classification and their economic importance. In this part, as I told you, the definition of lichen and mycorrhiza, they are important. So I will take up that part towards the end. But I hope till here it is clear. So thank you, children.